Alright guys, welcome to another video on Jujutsu Kaisen Phantom Parade. Now in today's video I am going to talk about Enhancement Quest, which is very important for you to be able to farm your resources efficiently in order to level up your characters. Because whilst it's only the second day of this global launch, you guys are probably mainly focusing on story mode, etc. Eventually there will be coming to a point where you just simply hard stuck and you won't be able to progress any further until you actually level up your character, etc. So, for example, take myself, I am at chapter 9, episode 6, and this stage I've been on it for loads of hours and just simply couldn't beat it. And I probably do need to actually level up my Gojo to even stronger in order to actually beat it. And this is where then you realize what is the why it's so important to farm up your resources efficiently, because stamina doesn't come very easily in this game, and therefore you want to maximize the amount of resources you're able to get per run or per stamina. Now for enhancement quest, this is particularly important, even more important than the curse object collection, because for curse object collection what you realize is that actually the harder stages prioritize gold. I mean, there is still a chance of dropping the bronze and silver items, but there are much lower probability. So even if you can't push too far, it's still okay to farm the earlier stages because you'll probably still be getting what you need. Whereas for the enhancement quest, it's actually very different because it's the same amount of stamina. However, the resources just doubled. So for example, this is stage 5 of the beacon training. You only get 4.5k, whereas for stage 6 you almost get 10k. So you get like pretty much double the amount of resources for the same stamina that you'll be using. So that's kind of why in today's video I'll be showing you guys how to clear all 3 different stages of the enhancement quest, so you're able to farm your resources as efficiently as possible. Alright, now let's first start off with stage 6 for the beacon training. Now this is the hardest stage out of all 3 of them, mainly because Gojo will have color disadvantage. So basically this stage is weaker against yellow character, which naturally means the stage is going to be more resistance to blue characters such as Gojo. So Gojo won't be doing as much damage as what you may have, for example, if you have Nobara instead, who actually have a color advantage. Now, what you would have realized is that my Gojo is due, because that's the way I planned my reroll. I know a lot of people kind of suggested rolling for Gojo plus Nobara, but personally I always thought rolling for 2 Gojo is better than Gojo plus Nobara, purely because you only have to pull your resources on one single character rather than spread them out across 2 characters. Therefore you can make sure your Gojo slots higher level, have more resource pump into it, and even though Gojo may be a color disadvantage in certain stages, the pure stat is able to make sure you are still at even grounds essentially. So that's kind of what I personally went down with the Gojo plus a dupe option. If you did go down the Gojo plus Nobara option instead, then obviously you would have Nobara, who's actually a yellow character, and she naturally has the advantage here. So this stage should be actually quite straightforward for those people who are using Nobara. If you do not have a Nobara with extra Gojo dupe, you just have like one single copy of Gojo. This is probably still doable because one extra dupe on Gojo just gives us in like 20% extra stats, which is a lot, but you are able to bridge that up by just having pure higher level, or maybe a stronger recollection, etc. So maybe you, rather than level 74 like me, you may have to get Gojo to level 80 in order to beat it, but it's definitely still doable and the strategy still applies. All right. So the strategy I'm using here is pretty much the strategy I use for every single battle, and what I think is personally is the best team right now, especially for the free-to-play players out there. Basically, you have 2 buffers and you have Kaito. The buffers will be stacking a buff every single turn. Kaito have the ability to give increased curse energy. So basically, Kaito acts as the battery to give power for your 2 buffers to continue stack up buff every single turn, and then that allows your Gojo to be a lot stronger, and then therefore actually kill off all of the enemies. Now in terms of the recollection bit, I do have quite a few SSR. The first one I'm not using on purpose in any of the battles, just to show you this is not needed, so you can replace that with anything. This one is for healing one. It's not mandatory. It does make your gameplay a bit easier in case you have one character continuously be targeted by the enemies all the time. Then this gives you kind of that safety net. But if you don't have it, don't worry too much. You can always just restart the battle. Remember Gojo is invincible to damage as well, so you can always kind of restart the battle and go for a lucky match where all of the enemy end up hitting your Gojo instead. It would take a bit more time, but it's not a mandatory requirement. Then for the SR memory on Kaito, this is a free-to-play one that you get, I think, when you beat chapter 7, so you can just use that. And then lastly, for the recollection on Gojo, you basically want something that can buff up their damage, and preferably buff up damage on a command to a normal attack rather than ultimate attack. So once again, I know a lot of people, when you are re-rolling, a lot of people were suggesting non-standard as the best recollection. I personally didn't think so, because non-standard can only activate on ultimate skills, whereas for Gojo, it's actually a bit more important for him to use recollection, which can be activated on normal attacks, which I'll show you in a bit why. But basically, you want to prioritize one which can actually be used on normal attack to make sure he can one-shot the enemy even without the ultimate. And yeah, let's just go into battle. The backup option, the backup character, you wouldn't be worrying about anyway, because you want to 3-star this, you want to sweep it, so you don't really care about who you have in the last slot. All right. So in the first wave, what you have is this really annoying enemy who's probably the toughest enemy in this whole game, because he is able to actually do AoE hits on all of your characters. Now he does have two types of attack, one AoE on one single target, and it's actually important you keep in mind which one he used, because next turn he would then end up using a different one. Okay, so what you want to do is, because this enemy can use AoE attack, it's very important you kill them off as quickly as possible. However, because your Gojo have color disadvantage, he's unlikely to be able to one-shot. So what I would suggest is that you actually put your Gojo using his skill 3 on the first turn, you want to buff himself up, and that allows you to actually then one-shot the enemy afterward. And there's a benefit to this, because assuming, for example, you need 2 hits to kill off an enemy, and there are 2 enemies, that basically means you need 4 turns to kill both of them. Gojo would disappear in 7 turns, so that's just taking too long for him to kill off 2 enemies. Whereas if you actually buff up Gojo, Gojo's buff actually lasts for 3 turns, so that basically means it's not just valid for your first attack against this enemy, but also valid for your second attack against the other enemy. That basically means you are able to kill off both enemies under just 3 turns as opposed to 4 turns. So that is going to be much better for Gojo, who actually have like a time restriction, and that's kind of why I strongly recommend people to buff up Gojo on the first turn rather than just doing a normal attack. Now, the second thing is that you want to keep in mind which enemy use which attack. Now, if we take a look, so you can see an enemy here using like a sweep, which done like an AoE, and then the second enemy just done a single target attack on one single character. And then what you see is the one done single attack move back to this position. So now we already know the one on the left just done AoE, the one on the right just done a single target. And because they can't use the same attack twice in a row, that basically means the one on the right is going to do an AoE next turn. And AoE is a lot more dangerous, because you can see I already have character on very low health, so I do not want to take another AoE. Whereas a single target, I also have that lucky chance where the enemy will end up hitting one of my full HP characters, or even Gojo, who is like immune to damage, right? So you definitely want to take out the AoE enemy as fast as possible. And I know this one, the enemy on the right, will be the one using AoE attack next, because he can't repeat the same attack twice in a row. That will be the one I will be targeting. So I'll be targeting the one on the right hand side. Now, for your buffers, they will constantly be buffing. For your Kaito, because he doesn't have enough to power up the curse energy anymore, he will be using normal attack. So aiming at the enemy on the right, and same thing with Gojo, aiming on the enemy on the right. And at the same time, you want to activate all of your recollection that will be buff up your damage. And that's kind of what I said earlier. It's better for you to have a recollection that can buff up your damage even on normal attack rather than only on ultimate attack, in order to ensure that you're able to actually one-shot the enemy. And the same thing will be applied here. I purposely chose Kaito to do a normal attack rather than buff up curse energy for this turn, because once again I want to ensure that one hit KO, and also I can use like a free buff this turn, because Kaito won't be needing to do any damage. Gojo will just be one-shotting this entire wave 2 with his ultimate attack anyway. So that's basically how you want to play out the first two waves. So remember, 3 turns taken in order to kill off the first wave and then 1 extra turn for the second wave. And that basically means Gojo already used up 4 of his turns. He can only stay on the field for 7 turns, so he only has 3 turns left. And luckily enough, there are only 3 enemies left on the third wave as well. So you can literally just have 1 turn for Gojo to kill every single one of them. Now it's quite obvious here that there's 1 boss enemy amongst the 3 enemies here, the bigger side one, also the one with like a break bar, and therefore he will probably have the highest HP. So what you want to do is you want your buffers to help taking him down. However, you only want to do this on the last turn because there's benefit for your buffers to be doing buffs early on so that Gojo can benefit from those buffs. Remember, buff lasts for 4 turns for those 2 buffers, and that's kind of why it's important for you to take out the minions first with Gojo, and then only on the very last turn have your buffers use their offensive move to help taking down the last boss. And now let's do the stage 6 for Recollection, which is actually going to be a lot easier because Gojo doesn't have color disadvantage anymore. I won't repeat the strategy again because it's just identical for the one for Beacon of Training. So if you want to refresh your memory, just simply watch that part again. But yeah, it's exactly the same. First turn, there are 2 enemies. You want to make sure you're able to one-shot them, so Gojo should be buffing himself for the first turn, and then that basically allow you to use all of your offensive Recollection on the second turn in order to make sure you're actually able to one-shot the enemy, which is what you see me doing here. Now I have been a bit unlucky here in the sense that all 3 of the enemy attack have been aiming on the same character, so I'll probably eventually need to heal him up with my SSR Recollection bit. However, if you don't have that, like I said, don't worry, you probably just need to restart the stage for a luckier matchup where you don't have the same character targeted 3 times in a row, right? Anyway, so for wave 2, once again, your Gojo should have his ultimate attack charge up, and he will just be able to wipe out all 4 of the enemy with 1 single attack, which is great. And then for the very last battle, there are actually only 2 enemies here. I'm just going to top up myself in terms of HP, but like I said, if you don't have that Recollection, just restart the battle for a luckier matchup. And yeah, because there are only 2 enemies, just go after them one by one, and yeah, that's pretty much it, how you can beat the Beacon of Recollection stage 6. And lastly, we have the JP quest stage 6. This is even simpler because Gojo actually have color advantage here, so it's even easier for him to do it. Now, what you notice is that the first wave has 3 enemies instead of 2, and because you still want to kill off all 3 enemies in 3 turns, so rather than charging up, you can just go for an attack straight away. And don't worry too much about it because you have the color advantage. It's very likely you'll be able to one-shot the enemy anyway. So that's basically what you see here. I'll just be doing the attack one by one to kill them up. Once again, my character will be unlucky. The same character got targeted twice in a row, so that's kind of why I use my Recollection bit to heal up his HP. If this happened to you and you do not have that Recollection for healing, just simply restart the stage until you get a matchup where your the enemy kind of attack different characters to spread out their damage, etc. For wave 2, once again, your ultimate attack should be charged up on your Gojo, and Gojo can just use it to wipe out all 4 enemies. And then lastly, on wave 3, once again, you have this really annoying enemy who have the potential to do AoE attack. So aim for him first to make sure you kill him off as fast as possible to avoid AoE damage on all of your units. Now, a tiny bit what I've done is I'll use Kaito to attack the boss rather than attacking the minion, and that's purely because I know my Gojo is able to one-shot, especially with the color advantage, but it's a very minor optimization you can make. You probably don't need to do that if you don't want to. It's absolutely fine. But yeah, like I said, so on the sixth turn, what you'll be doing is, if your Kaido have ultimate ready, by the way, always use it. It's like a buff for 3 turns in terms of damage output, so definitely try to use it. Yeah, you just kill off the final enemy like that.